process of pulling the, and this wasn't the purpose of this paper today, but pulling that group together to what I describe as kind of a pre-commitment phase. So rather than build it and they will come, really tighten them in as you would normally do in a commercial transaction. And we're not having any difficulty finding people out of in the last 48 hours coming at us with their suggestions of land from the private sector with suggestions of land. For what it's, I hear what you're saying, but I mean this could be 9 months to a year. I'm not. You know, I wouldn't put I couldn't put a date on it and confirm that you could land something within a time frame. So I think to that point, I think they're better to focus going forward rather than back. Does that make sense?
Yes. Well, we are the council of haste after all.
You wouldn't know it sometimes. Councillor Wayne Walker.
I really just want to pick up also on these comments around what's commercially viable and how far off we are. Quite obviously, we've got a piece of land here that council owns. We're in a position not unlike the waterfront Auckland space where we're able to engineer results that are outstanding. And I don't know that we're going to be in as good a position simply leaving it to the marketplace and assuming that they will deliver. And I don't know what the comparison is there, even with the interest. So what I'd like to know, and like others, I'd like to hear from AT, just potentially how far off we are, how that matches with the statement around commercially appropriate terms, because obviously that is a process in itself, and I would have appreciated an opportunity to explore that. I'm mindful in terms of the situation now that council is already involved with some film studios out west, and we do have some risk there, albeit quite minimal, and we do know that there's interest within the industry in terms of relocating South Pacific Studios and the like. So there are some pretty concrete things that are on the table now. I just don't know what the delay is going to be, however many years that would be, from some alternative, on the notion that we will be able to pull off, or the industry can pull off some land somewhere else. So this is, as far as I'm concerned, a bird in the hand. Can we not explore it further? What degree of time is required to firm things up? Because as much and all as you mentioned, a 9-month time frame, let's say, we're going to have ever high levels of certainty within that time frame. So within a couple of months, we might have a high level of certainty around the structures that could be put in place to enable this and to de-risk it from council's perspective, so that we've got an exit strategy.
Through the chair, I mean, I think the last comment that you make is the key one. There is about how you de-risk it, and the important thing here is to get it in context. The piece of land is only one component of the cost, and actually a relatively small component of the cost and the risk, ironically. When everyone seems to be quite focused on the land and whether the land would, you could ascribe residential value to it or commercial value to it. We always, as a starting point, looked at commercial value rather than residential, so there's a $15 million or whatever the figure is haircut in one sense. So that was our starting point, and then we looked at the overall proposition from there. The challenge here is how do you de-risk it, and we also, and that takes a considerable length of time to bring parties together. The names you mentioned we'd already had in the equation, but if you think about it, as I would describe it, it's a bit like a circle, and you've got to really fill in, I don't know, probably a good 60 or 70% of that circle with commitment and firm commitment before anyone in a development sense would actually move forward with that. So I understand what you're saying about a bird in the hand, but my point here is that the land is not the critical piece. Owning the land is not the critical piece in terms of being able to manufacture a de-risked thing. It certainly contributes if you're willing to take a significant haircut.
You've got to have somewhere to put it.
Yeah, I think we'll find, and from talking to Brett O'Reilly this morning, he was saying they've already got people coming at us, private sector people coming at us now with the visibility around this, with other alternatives. out in those areas. So I'm not, there was certainly some attractive features around Hobsonville. I'm not disputing that for a moment. The challenge here is around that, exactly to your point, how you de-risk it to a level. I didn't even actually aim to de-risk it to the point where the council was taking no risk. I was at a point where I was trying to work if we could get to something that I could come back to this committee and say, are you prepared to take a level of risk? But we were still a long, long way away from that. These are not insignificant sums. And we had, international people involved. We had domestic developers involved who do this all day long. So I'm not disagreeing with you, but it is quite a challenge to de-risk it to even to a level that would be acceptable. And as I say, we also saw in the AFS as a logical part of that, and the other names you mentioned, they were all at the table as well.
So just further to my question then, is it conceivable that there could be a way forward based on more information? You're coming back to us around a range of factors, a commercial proposition, levels of risk, what sort of structures, what sort of exit strategy? I mean, how far away are we from that? And how much time have we got?
Into the new year before, I think the reality, you'd be into the new year before you'd be coming back with something that was half, to your point about, a little more certainty. But if I could give you a piece of advice, I honestly think, and this is just my view to be fair, but I honestly think where the industry's now got to, they'd actually rather move forward. The piece of land has been litigated a number of times, and I think, and I'm sure Brett could confirm it, Brett O'Reilly could confirm it.
It'd be nice to hear from Brett.
I'm
Come on.
not sure if he's here, but I'm sure it could be confirmed that actually the industry's in that space now saying let's go forward.
Yeah. So I do understand the interest, and I must admit I appreciate it hugely in this issue. The reality is, though, this is the decision about Hobsonville. We were unequivocal in the recommendation we passed where we put this strong timeline on, and I know for Councillor Cooper and myself we found that very, very challenging. We were desperate to try and nail this down. However, the bigger picture that's now being followed is the setting up of studio infrastructure and a film precinct, hopefully out west, and looking for the partners and the right land on which to do this. This entire discussion today, however, is closing off on the Hobsonville discussion. So I've got Councillor Brewer.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair.
Lee.
Look, this is an entirely appropriate outcome, and I was one that was thinking with some nervousness that this was going to, given that we only had a one-line recommendation in our agenda, that this would be about breathing some life and for ATED and giving it an extension of time, as we did time and time again with the Marine Precinct, with the same outcome eventually. So back in July the 7th, as you've articulated, Madam Chair, we did put up a tight time frame for a definitive and commercially viable proposal or conditional agreement. And while there's been a lot of talk and the parties have come together in the film sector and TV sector and council are working together like never before, nonetheless, we still haven't got that that viable proposal to go with. So I think this is a great outcome. I hear what you're saying, that this still opens the door to future investment, potentially. But by signing up to B, I know I and others certainly doesn't sign up to a long journey necessarily with council up to its eyeballs in the film industry. What it signs us up to is a journey to the first quarter of 2016 to see just what opportunities are out there for particular partnerships and infrastructure going forward. But I want to allude to the agenda where it says that the AOI is of the opinion that no proposal is sufficiently advanced at this stage, and that the AOI has been unable to obtain no firm commitment, either in substance or in principle, from any private sector party willing to assume either development risk alternatively or the overall operating risks. And so, yes, it's good that this might have expedited a bringing together of some parties, but it certainly is the right decision to walk away from Hobsonville. And I've always been one that's advocated Hobsonville as as a 14.6 master plan, that if anything, film studios could have been seen as completely incongruous with that residential development there, given that it's selling so well and there's so much demand for housing. Why would we put big format film studios down at Hobsonville Point there, and why not instead put housing on 16 of the hectares and possibly a town centre on the other 6 and some public open space? And again, it can be boutique, because all that investment that this council and the previous Waitakere City Council put in and around Norska shows that we don't need big format industry to drive Hobsonville. It's at the end of the road there in a development called Norska. I also point, Madam Chair, to the July 7 recommendations and resolutions. The ACPL had a huge list of why it preferred the 14.6 master plan and the significant advantages, namely, the most importantly, in quote from July 7's minutes, in short, or agenda, Auckland Council would be $24 million worse off in cash terms if it progresses with the film studio campus scenario at Hobsonville. The ACPL proposal will return to ratepayers the entire $36 million spent to date and is predicted to secure an additional $30 million surplus. So, as we know with Cameron and Partners and EY and others, they've been saying where is the best place to land your projects and to spend your dollars. And I agree, there could be a location outside of Hobsonville that might be more appropriate. But I was surprised, Madam Chair, that ACPL said to us that ATEED had never approached them in that workshop we had never approached them on alternative locations. And so ATEED went about, and I've got all the books that they've written and commissioned in that, with blinkers on, heading to Hobsonville as the all and only suggestion and proposition, without even ringing up ACPL or David Rankin and saying, is there any other piece of dirt in the northwest of Auckland? Well, now that's going to be forced upon them, and that's good, because they haven't got Hobsonville Point, and nor should they. And every couple lining up at an auction this weekend and next week will be pleased that they've got a better chance of buying a house at Hobsonville Point, and it's not being foregone for big format, precast concrete, giant film studios. And finally, Madam Chair, I was amazed when the chair of the local board, Upper Harbour I think it was, Lisa White, said that Whenuapai had never been consulted. The Royal New Zealand Air Force, that's got a flight path right over there, had never been consulted on whether they thought flying Hercules or whatever they fly straight over the film studios is conducive to making films in a sound show. And so there have been some things that have been...
Making World War II movies.
Well, that's right. There have been things that have been surprising. To me, it's one, that Hobsonville residential development came up as a film studio idea. 2, that ACPL were never ever consulted on and have complained bitterly on other alternative sites. And 3, that the nearby airfield has never been brought up. So thank you, Madam Chair, for your indulgence on my one and only speech today. And I know that you always enjoy my speeches. So I'll wind it up on a high note. And we'll keep quiet until at least we have an SHA coming up in confidence in the near future. Thank you.
Very good speech. Very
Thank you.
Thank you, too.
Normally I love speeches, but we're trying to finish by 5, and we still have
Well, I
5
could have
items
delivered
plus
6
local
o'clock.
board input to go. Okay, righty-ho. Thank you, Councillor. I've got Councillor Lee, and then we'll put the recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What I've heard today just confirms what I felt at our meeting in July, and I endorse what Councillor Brewer has said, and I endorse your recommendation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, good.
Thank you,
I'll
Mike.
put the recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you, and again, thank you, John.
Thank you, Chair.
And congratulations on your new role.
I'm not sure if that's thanks or not, actually, to be honest.
It's a good challenge. So moving on to our confidential reports, I will move the recommendation in our agenda, which is A
Second.
and B, seconded by councillor Wood. I'll put that, all the noes in favour, please say aye.
All right, I
Against,
better make Silma wait.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, we'll just take 2 minutes while we reorder ourselves, thank you.